Welcome to Raising Joyful and Resilient Black Children. I'm Dr. Sharita Butler-Barnes.
And I'm Dr. Valerie Adams-Bass. We are excited to continue our special series highlighting programs that uplift and empower Black families through culturally affirming wellness practices.
And so today we are joined by an extraordinary change maker and Parent Joy Circle member, Desiree Tucker. She is the recipient of the Beyond Diet and Exercise Grant, and her work defines health by centering joy, culture, and family.
Desiree, thank you for being here with us today, and welcome to the show again. And so we're just happy to have you here with us today.
Thank you so much. I'm happy to be here and great to see you both again.
Awesome. So we're going to have a more focused conversation today. So we're going to start by asking you if you could share a little bit about your background and the path that led to your current work.
Okay. So again, my name is Desiree Tucker. The organization that I represent is called Women Solve. It is a nonprofit organization based in Frederick, Maryland. And we bring groups of women together to solve community issues. And these groups form planning committees, and each group focuses on a different community issue, community effort at a time. And they see that project initiative is what we call it. They see that initiative through. So in the beginning, when, I was thinking about doing this, what I noticed was that in joining other organizations and other groups and being part of other committees, sometimes, you can feel like you're sitting there and every week you're going through, okay, well, we have this issue and we have this issue and we have this issue. And the list gets so long and repeated kind of every week, and you just don't feel like you're getting anywhere. So what our organization did was take one issue with one group. They focus on solving that problem, solving that issue. And That is their charge. And once they see it through, once they solve it, then they're done. They can join another initiative, or, they can go on and start their own nonprofit or do other work in the community. So that's how Women Solve works.
Wow. I mean, that sounds great. So I have a couple of follow-up questions related. So how long has Women Solve been around, and about how many women are involved in Women Solve, and how many projects, so 3 parts, how many projects are happening at the same time?
So Women Solve started in late 2019 and became an official 501c3 in 2020. And, right now we have 4 or 5 initiatives going, and that number changes, goes up, goes down a little bit at a time.
Okay.
And, we can have anything from 2 women leading the initiative to 10. And then with one of our larger programs called Seed to Roots, which is an annual showcase of talent here in the county. Students from all over the county are invited to perform at the Weinberg Center, which is a international stage, and they are able to show their talent no matter where they've come from, if they have had professional training or not. They are able to get up on that stage and show everybody what they've got. And that initiative itself celebrates Black history. Every performance is in honor of Black history and Black culture. So that's the requirement. They go through an application process. So for that particular initiative, which is probably our largest, we may have 10 people on the planning committee, but then we have another 25 volunteers, who help throughout that event. So it just
wow, that's wonderful. So you've been around for a little bit over 5 years, and you've been doing a lot in the community. And so we do want to congratulate you on receiving the Beyond Diet and Exercise Grant. So congratulations on being around for 5+ years, and definitely on receiving the Beyond Diet and Exercise Grant.
Thank you.
So given that you are solving different issues, can you tell us what inspired your project that's related to this grant? And what need did Women Solve see in the community that you wanted to use this grant to address?
So we named this initiative Get Fit Frederick. And the idea, again, this is our second year in receiving this grant. So this is cycle 2. And it's a brand new grant last year. And what we saw was that, GLP-1s, everybody was talking about the weight loss drugs and people were not as familiar, especially in our community, and were somewhat fearful. So that one thing kind of sparked interest for me in this particular grant and area, and just having conversations with women about, what does this look like? Let's get an expert in to answer questions about, what this can and cannot do, and get rid of some of the fear if we can, or, maybe it's not for you, but let's talk about it and let's introduce it. And also just the thought of, I personally have gone through my entire life dieting up and down, trying to lose weight and feeling deprived, taking it away from yourself, only to fail over and over and over again, gain the weight back. And so that's what we were hearing, similar stories like mine from community members. And so that's what made us want to go for it. And the program that we created is for women and their children. And it is to help think about diet and fitness in different ways. So it's not about deprivation, and it's not about, you got to be hitting it at the gym, even, 3, 4, 5, 6 days a week. It's about thinking of diet and fitness in different ways that in our community, we're not always exposed to.
Sure.
So that's what got us interested. That's why we applied. And now we're in year 2.
So I just want to step back. I'm sure Dr. Sharita has questions for you. So can you just tell us, as you said, there was lots you didn't know about current, opportunities to maintain and manage your weight or weight loss, and that was something personal, but also that you saw needed in your community and the rapid changes that were being discussed at large in the media. Can you, for our listeners who may not know, tell us what a GLP is, right? Just tell us what these things are that were sort of in the air, in the ether, that brought you to say, we would love to have this be the focus of our grant here in Fredericks.
So the GLP-1s is just one example that I used because we did actually have a physician come and hold a workshop and talk about this particular drug. And the GLP-1s started with, everyone's called it the Ozempic drug or the skinny shot. And these medicines actually have been around for a while, but what they discovered with Ozempic specifically was, people, it's a diabetic drug for people who were diabetics. And a side effect was that them being on the drug, they were also losing weight. And so there was a lot of back and forth with, people who were not diabetic trying to get access to the drug and being denied. So they created another version of it that is just for weight loss. And of course, there's a lot of challenges with getting insurance to pay and getting doctors on board as well, because it's not just community members. There are a lot of doctors who just, did not and still do not want to offer this drug to their patients, which made a lot of, clinics pop up where, you could come in really without a lot of oversight and get your shot. People are still now ordering them online, and getting them from other countries. So, we talk about that as well as part of our program. And we started that piece last year. So Ozempic, which then led to the version of it that is for weight loss, which is Wegovy. And then there's now Zepbound, which is also another version of the medication. It's a different type, but has it still with that GLP-1 family, also as a weight loss drug. It's a once a week shot that you take and you titrate up. So you start at a lower dose and then you keep going up gradually as you can tolerate it. But some people can't tolerate the side effects, and which can be kind of nasty, but it has been very effective for lots of people.
Thank you so much. So I just want to sort of for our listeners, so GLP, these drugs that we are hearing about, and I know it may start to be technical, but we're going to pull back. So GLP is really a natural hormone that's released by our intestines and helps to monitor our food intake. And I am not a medical doctor. I'm a psychologist, but I'm just sort of looking at what the GLP stands for, because we've heard GLP, but exactly what does it stand for? It's a hormone that kind of helps us manage our weight and how we respond to our food intake. Yeah, just wanted to put that in there. Yeah.
So thank you for that. And also that clarification on that. And in discussing your program, telling us a little bit about it, you told us a little bit about it, which I appreciate. How are families engaging with your program?
So we create different events and then we put it out there on social media and invite people to participate in these events for free. The grant covers their participation. The most recent event that we had was a charcuterie class where, women got to come and learn about mindful eating and being in the moment and really, tasting different textures and flavors and combinations and thinking about what you're putting into your body and just being there in the moment to take your time to create this beautiful board of salami roses and brie rivers and, heart-shaped strawberries. And we had hibiscus tea. And I mean, it was just a beautiful, calm and mindful experience.
So I really do like the mindfulness piece of this. And this leads to the next question that I had. So this series is all about going beyond traditional definitions of health. And so one way is that you talked about your program, how it addresses wellness and it goes beyond just diet and exercise is mindfulness. Are there other ways too?
So, another class that we had was, or workshop this go round was we did a aerial fitness class. And again, I'm not an expert in these matters, right? So I'm new to it, just like everyone else is. The way we form our planning committees is, we look for the experts. If we have somebody brings an idea to us and says, I'm seeing a need, and we figure out who the experts are, right? So very often I'm brand new. I had never done charcuterie either. The aerial fitness class was all about using silk fabrics. If you've seen, people, women and men, using them to, suspend their bodies in different ways. The fabrics are hung from the ceiling. They support up to 500 pounds.
Wow. You're saying that I just have the break in. You're saying that thin gauzy fabric can support 500 pounds.
Yes. I mean, because that was one of the questions, we had women of all sizes be able to participate in this. And, that was one of the questions that came up when people wanted to register. Well, can I do this? And I was happy to say, absolutely. And it's actually a lot of work. I mean, to be able to pull yourself up, suspend, stand there, with one leg this way and, one arm out this way. And it was a lot of fun, but also a different way of working out. It's something that, you wouldn't have necessarily thought about before or been exposed to. We also have a pole dancing class.
Wow.
That was a lot of fun as well. It takes a lot of energy and strength to hold on and, to get yourself up on the pole. That's a lot of, upper and lower body strength. So both great and new experiences.
How has the response been from families or community members? Like, are there any stories or moments that stood out? I mean, you share all this wonderful ways to do this. Any moments stood out? Like any responses from families or community members?
Last year we did a ice skating session. We had families come with their kids, and it was so heartwarming. Have kids who had never seen an ice rink before. And I remember one of the first questions this little boy said, "How did they get the ice in here? Like, how did they do that?" And I mean, it was so sweet and innocent. And, to see them stepping on the ice for the first time, being a little bit fearful about, what that feels like. If you've ever been ice skating, it's very slick.
Very slick. Very slick.
Very slick. That was great. And then to get parents out there with them as well, because some of them didn't think they could do it. And to, have that encouragement and that sense of community, even if this is someone you've never seen before, but, say, come on, you can do it. Give it a try and, get your skates and I'll help you. And So that was something that really stood out to me, a session that I really enjoyed, and the kids loved it and the parents had a great time. They were sore afterwards, but when we had some falls, everybody had a good time.
And thinking about bonding, so we also talk about the power of culture and those things. How are like cultural strengths and traditions woven into your approach and what you work with and what you do with families?
So, we listen to feedback. We also, after every session, we ask for feedback. The way that we usually kick off our program in the fall is with recipes, because we're starting, in November and going into December and then, rounding up through January. So that's a lot of time for family gatherings and, Nana's banana pudding and, the cornbread stuffing that, requires 5 sticks of butter and, and all that wonderful sausage. And so encouraging people to share their recipes, share their traditions that all feel very familiar and comforting and like home. So that's one way. But again, we also ask for feedback so that we do stay connected and in touch with our culture and introduce also to new cultures in our community, because that's also what this program is about. So if, someone suggests, hey, I'm interested in learning how to fix this particular dish from this country, then you know what? We can do that. We can design an entire menu, have a chef come in, and let's have a dinner night and make that happen. So that's one way that we do it. I mean, we all have, I think, in our community and in our culture, food is a universal way that we come together and connect. And sharing a meal is something that is so bonding and usually a great experience.
It sounds like you really are diversifying, what it means to be healthy, have healthy food choices and healthy, just physical activities. And I will side note, I rollerblade, and rollerblading is very similar to ice skating. So if you ice skate, you can rollerblade. If you rollerblade, you can ice skate. So for those of you listening, if you rollerblade, you can ice skate and vice versa.
Absolutely.
And so also you were mentioning, this idea of culture and also community, as Dr. Sharita was saying, that people come together and help one another. They have these first time experiences for many participants. I'm wondering, with such a dynamic menu and broad spectrum of health that you're presenting, have you encountered any barriers, whether they've been structural, whether there's been resistance from the community, financial or otherwise, in implementing the program? And if so, if you had those barriers, how have you managed them? And if you haven't had those barriers, how have you managed to to skate around them? Pun intended.
So I will say that, this program is designed for Black women and their children. And that's who we focus on. That's who we're targeting. And although others are welcome to attend, we welcome everyone, but that's who we're focusing on. And in the beginning, especially last year, I wrote up press releases to talk about the program and who we were targeting. And, some of my initial conversations with some of like the fitness centers was, oh, yeah, great. Okay, I'm going to send you the press release, see, what we're doing. And then silence. Can we get a date on the calendar? No response. And I've had that happen a couple of different times, which I mean is good to know, because I certainly want
it is good to know.
And have anyone, part of our group feel uncomfortable. So that definitely has been one barrier, especially because sometimes press is involved and shows up and we take photos and that's going to be publicized. So yeah, that's definitely been something that I have run into on more than one occasion, where it seems like the interest dried up once it was discovered, this is lots of Black women and possibly their kids coming in to this space.
And so knowing that you had that kind of response, how did you overcome that response? Or what are some other avenues you used to advertise and book the space so that you could have these other dates and kinds of activities for the community?
So I want to make sure that everyone is welcome. So I'm honest about what the program is, and in sharing, pictures and just being honest about, this is in the press release. It says exactly what this program is, how it was funded, and who we're targeting and focusing on. And I think, that for me and for the people that are participating in these programs is important. Because again, I don't want anybody to walk into a situation where they're not made to feel welcome. That's what this is all about. You have to be comfortable, and, there's a certain level of exposure and really kind of putting yourself out there if you're going to be pole dancing or on fabrics or, maybe falling on an ice rink. You want to feel like you're in a safe space and environment to be able to enjoy yourself. And also that, your kids are going to feel protected because kids are very sensitive and they pick up.
Absolutely.
And so we're very conscious of that.
Okay. That's good to hear.
Go to places that, embrace us and are like, oh, great. Come on.
Right. Was there a strategy for finding those places, or just as you found them, you took note of what those places were or where those places were?
Yes. I mean, I think we took feedback from planning committee members in trying to, again, think of unique experiences for people to have and things that, like I said, like I maybe had never heard of or thought about before.
Mm-hmm.
And, that just takes a little bit of research and talking to other folks. In something as simple as like a Pilates class. We did a Pilates class, and a lot of people have done Pilates with mats, but to actually get on the machine, the reformer machine, and do it is a whole different experience. So,
especially if you stick with it.
Yeah. And it's a lot of work.
It is a lot of work. Yeah. So I have a two-part question. So thinking about that, those affirming spaces and those different athletic or physically challenging activities, what would it look like? And thinking about, affirming spaces, what would it look like if you could reimagine systems that support family health, right? So this program is for Black women and their children. So knowing that there were some spaces that were resistant or not as welcoming, what would it look like to reimagine the systems that support family health, particularly Black family health?
That's a good question. It's even just as a Black woman in this country, I think I'm always thinking about that. And especially when I'm bringing other people in, who I feel like are under my protection, I'm introducing into this new system, into this new space. And it's my responsibility to make sure that they're comfortable. So reimagining, systems is right now that seems so, I don't know. And I don't want to sound negative, so out of reach almost. Racism is so embedded in everything we see, touch, feel, and so much of what our kids experience and don't even recognize or realize again. And that's heavy, and it starts with school systems, right? Just looking at that, our kids spend more time with their teachers and then they do with us very often. And, that's a system right there where we already know what we're up against, especially in a county like mine, where we are just such a small population and percentage. So, what would it look like? It would feel like comfort. It would feel like, not having to wonder if we're going to go in the spot and, be accepted and having to worry about, reactions from the people that are standing behind me as we walk into a space and not having to feel so guarded, because the people that are running that space do not look like us when we walk in there. And maybe they've never seen so many of us walk in at one time. So that's a lot. And it's heavy, but again, we go in strong and in a good spirit. And hope to, we're being introduced to something new, and very often so are they. And that's a shift and that's a change in their system, perhaps.
Absolutely. I do want to kind of follow up because we've talked a lot about the activities that are family inclusive or designed for the parents or the mothers, the women in the group. And, when we take care of ourselves, we can do a better job of taking care of our children. It gives us more energy. We feel good about ourselves. But we also know that there's a high rate of obesity and high BMI among our teens and our adolescents. An increasing number of Black adolescents, both male and females, are being diagnosed with diabetes. So I'm wondering, as part of your program, have you created or developed workshops or activities that are focused, putting the children's focus and needs ahead, or helping them to think about how they eat and the things that they do?
You know what? Hopefully, if we get around 3, that will be an area that I can absolutely focus on. We have not done much with nutrition specifically for children. We've mostly focused it on family and women, but I can't say that children, that we've zeroed in on that quite yet. But that's something that I definitely would do.
I look forward to hearing about that. I talk about often when I'm teaching. It was during a time where muffin tops were popular, and thinking about an expanded definition of health. And I recall adolescent girls speaking about eating habits to develop muffin tops. And I had to chuckle as I was saying, I'm running to the gym to prevent muffin tops, right? I don't know if that works at this stage and age, but, really thinking about the social capital associated with body image. And when we think about, as you started out, social media and the influence of social media, particularly as it targets adolescent girls and adolescent boys. I mean, we see, the commodification of Black women's physiques. I would love to hear about a round 3 where you give some time and attention to Black adolescent boys and girls, particularly girls, around all things health. So eating choices, physical activity, sports, all of those things. I would love to hear that that's becoming more and more a part of the program and initiative.
That would be wonderful. We've got a couple more events coming up, but, they're mostly like we have a fencing and VR fitness. So virtual reality where, 9 people who are going to stand with the goggles and box or do some other fitness things. So
awesome. That sounds good. We have a colleague whose children fence, her children and grandchildren fence. So that's good to hear that they'll be exposed. And actually, I had another colleague. I was trying to get her to teach fencing in the community program in which I worked. So we're in the sport. I'm glad that it's being introduced. As you move forward and think about possibly a round 3 and really finishing the second round strongly, what advice would you give to others who are hoping to start a similar initiative in their communities, whether they're in a small community like you or they're in a larger community? What advice would you give to others?
I would say that don't be afraid to try something new, even if it sounds like, something that just sounds, outrageous. Like, I don't know, the aerial fabrics to me was just a wild one. And I really just literally could not imagine how those fabrics held people up, like you mentioned earlier. So don't be afraid to jump out there and try something new and talk to your neighbors, talk to friends, encourage other people to do it with you, because that's what makes it, more fun. And I say that this program, has been one of the most fun programs or initiatives that we've had, just because we're getting to have all these adventures and people can bring their kids along, which eliminates a barrier. Sometimes you just can't participate because
absolutely
where,
Yep.
So certainly, you're welcome. Bring your kid along. You can do it together and as a family. And so that's been a great part of it as well.
Awesome.
So you talked a little bit about, what you love about it. What brings you the most joy from your work?
Seeing solutions and really, when we tackle something and are able to see it through to make change happen. That's the most rewarding. And then seeing other people then pick it up and want to do the same thing. Some people in some organizations can be intimidated by that. We're all going after similar pots of money and funding and, donors and funders. But it's inspiring to me if we're doing something and somebody else thinks that's great. I want to do this in my community also. I think that's awesome.
And so how can our listeners learn more about your program or support your work? How can they learn more?
Visit our website, womensolve.org, and learn about the different programs that we have there. You can always email us at wesolve at womensolve.org to ask about what we've got going on, or if you would like to volunteer or, learn more about upcoming programming. Definitely got some things going on for the summer with our Seed to Roots students. And, we're closing out this grant and a couple of others. So yeah, they absolutely hit us up on the website.
Awesome. And I know you've talked about, I'm still befuddled over the aerial that you mentioned. And I'm wondering what the shoes were like for the pole dancing as well as a shoe fanatic, right? I do want to ask, so if you had to, just for the parent who's listening or the caregiver who's listening, maybe they're not ready to start a program, but they're thinking about health and well-being and how to share that or encourage those activities or increase them with their children. What's your joy quotient? What's one thing from your program that you would encourage our listeners to do with their children actively as a joy quotient that's related to health and well-being? So what would you say brings you joy as you think about health and well-being with your children? What's your recommendation?
Really opening up the door for conversations about what they would like to do and would like to do with you together. Would you like to go ice skating? Do you want mom to try that with you? And, VR, that's something that, again, not necessarily at home accessible to all, but, there's an arcade that happens to be here where we can go and all experience that. So talking to your kids and really just having conversations about, what kind of things could we do together and introducing them to new things that, you haven't tried either. And maybe having them bring something to you. Well, I heard my, friends are into fencing, and
that makes sense.
What's that about? Yeah.
That totally makes sense. And you might even make a game out of it. I like to make challenges. My child tends to jump into challenges all the time. But yeah, so this idea of having conversations or figuring out what kind of physical activity you might want to do with your children, or if there's a special meal that you want to cook with your children on health and well-being, a healthier option sounds like ways to engage.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. Awesome.
Those conversations, got to have those after school, whenever you can catch them willing to talk to you.
Yeah. You might have to text them or send them a TikTok video.
Well, that's a way of connecting, Yeah, Mom, I saw this on TikTok. Are you doing this dance? Is this, maybe we can do it together? And, Mom looks crazy, but hey, we're doing it together. And it's a way to engage and to, get some steps in there as well,
Yeah,
get that
might be up. That might be what I'm doing after this recording with my own child. So I hear you. Thanks so much for sharing that, Desiree.
Yeah, and I was going to say, Desiree, thank you so much, because your value, you're one of our parents, Joy Circle, you have this amazing grant. And so thank you again for joining us. Your work is a powerful reminder that wellness is rooted in culture, connection, and community.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, guys.
Absolutely. Thanks for joining us. And thank you to our listeners for being with us. Be sure to follow us and stay tuned for more episodes that uplift Black families and celebrate our strengths and resilience. Until next time, stay joyful and resilient.